Hello, and welcome to the Week 4 recap of the NPL. I am your host, Dave, and I am joined today by my college neighbor. Would you care to introduce yourself?
I'm sorry, everyone. I lied. I said that last week would be my last appearance on the weekly recap, but unfortunately, Palm got sick, so you're gonna have to stick with me for one more week. Hopefully, maybe I'll be on here again, but as far as I know, this should be my last week, so just bear with us one more time. So here for the first game, which will be commentated by my co-host Dave, we have the Washington Charizards coached by Slick Rick Nixon against the Atlanta Braviaries coached by Trev the King. Now, what did you think at the team matchup, Dave?
Looking at Trev's team, it looks like he's brought a very balanced looking team with the likes of special walls such as Blissey, possibly Seismitoad, and Reuniclus, while he also has some pretty devastating sweepers such as Mega Charizard Y, as well as the Blade. Now, immediately looking at these two teams, you see Politoed, which is a Pokemon that can set up Rain really quickly, as well as Mega Charizard Y, which could set up Sun very quickly, so immediately you can only assume that there will be a lot of weather war. Looking at Nixon's team, though, it looks like he built his team largely around the Rain. I mean, with that Politoed setting up Drizzle and whatever, it looks like his Jolteon could synergize well with it with Thunder, Tornadus, he could have Hurricane. Overall, it looks like his team was meant to synergize well with his Rain strategy.
Yeah, I feel the same way because I know that Nixon made some big changes to his team, adding a whole Rain element with Politoed, things like Bootops, Kingdra, and Trev prepared for that well because he has a Charizard Y on his team, which naturally is a pretty big threat to the Rain, and then he's got things like Seismitoad, which can take water moves, obviously, with Water Absorb very easily, and Blissey to take possible Draco Meteors that would be aimed at the Seismitoad. So I think Trev did a very, very nice job preparing here, but Nixon really does have a scary team, so this should be a pretty interesting game. So in this match, interestingly enough, Trev really, really utilized his wall core, and I mean, I wouldn't say it's necessarily a huge wall core, but he really did have Seismitoad was really useful in this match because the fact that Nixon could not just spam water moves, fearing Seismitoad just being able to come in and absorb the water with Water Absorb. That definitely changed the way Nixon had to play. And if you wanted to bring something like Kabutops that really gets walled by Seismitoad, so the Seismitoad here was definitely really important. And Blissey really, really did a lot of toxic stalling, right, Dave?
Yeah, this Blissey was a monster at putting toxin on everything on Nixon's team. I mean, Tornadus got poisoned, Tangrowth got poisoned, and Nixon didn't really have a Pokemon that could use Heal Bell or Aromatherapy to get rid of a status condition such as Toxic.
Exactly. He doesn't have a single what's the word? Immunity to Toxic. So he didn't even bring his Scizor, for example, his Mega Scizor, to be able to absorb Toxic. He didn't bring. I'm not sure if he has a Poison type on his team off the top of my head, but whatever it was, he did not bring Pokemon that could absorb Toxic, which definitely allowed Trev to successfully whittle down his team. And then overall, I think that Trev prepared well, really, really well. And not that Nixon didn't prepare well, but I think that he made a lot of new transactions and really turned his team into pretty much a Rain team. He's got things like Jolteon that can use Thunder in the Rain.
He's got Tornadus Therian too to use that Hurricane in the Rain as well.
Exactly. Tornadus is a staple even on OU Rain teams. So the fact that he's got those two, and then Kingdra and the Bootops, which are some of the best Rain abusers in the entire game, he really does have a Rain themed team. And Mega Scizor also works fantastically in the Rain. So he really does have a Rain team. Not that he has to bring it all the time, but he does have a Rain team, and he really needs to get used to preparing with Rain in a draft league format, because Rain can be very, very dangerous, but when your opponent knows that that's what's coming, it's definitely different. So you really have to learn how to use Rain to get past your opponents, and that's what I think kind of went on this match. I'm not sure if Nixon was so comfortable with his new Rain themed team to be able to break through Trev's.
Contrasting though, Trev also brought a Sun team with that Mega Charizard Y, possibly to counter the possible Rain team that Nixon was building in the meantime.
And think about it, he's got the Venusaur too, so he's going to be running 4 full Venusaur. I actually, back in Gen 5, I used to like to run Sun teams, and I would always run Sunny Day Venusaur, and it was like one of the greatest switches to Politoed because non-offensive Ice Beams don't 2-hit KO even Venusaur without tons of HP investment, and normal Politoads without Ice Beam or just Scald, the bulky rest ones with Damp Rock and things like that get totally shut down by Venusaur. So unless they have Hypnosis or something to catch Venusaur off guard, it could just come in and set up a Sunny Day and then really, really threaten Nixon's team, even with something like Sleep Powder to catch the Tornadus. So I definitely think Trev had the matchup here, but what was really crazy in this match, and something to note, was that when Nixon brought out his Crocodile to take on the +2 to Blade, he went for Earthquake and got an absolutely minimum roll, knocking the Blade all the way down to 1%. So if he got any bit higher of a roll, he would have been able to knock out the Blade, which later went on to 6-0 sweep the Washington Charizard. So Trev did pull off the 6-0, and with his Blade, which is really, really running away with the MVP spot right now. So shout outs to Trev in using such a, I wouldn't say underrated Pokemon, but before the season started, I wouldn't necessarily think of Blade as being the MVP, so props to him for using that incredibly well. What do you think about that, Dave?
I just can't believe how strong Blade can be. I mean, after watching it sweep so many Pokemon, after easily setting up like that, it's really a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy threatening, and its typing is so good. Its versatility is nice because it's not just, it's not locked into certain sets. It doesn't have too many crazy things it can do, but the things that it does, it's really, really good at. And with its ridiculous bulk and typing, it really can be a huge threat in this format, and Trev is proving it. So, that's all I really have to say about that game. Do you have any closing words on that one?
Ultimately, I think this battle just came down to solid preparation. It's one thing to build around a strategy that you would love to try around, but it's also really important to imagine what your opponent might bring against you to counter your strategy in advance.
Alright, so for the second game of the weekly recap, we have the Colorado Avalos, coached by Fog, otherwise known as the Foghorn Channel, and the Phoenix Sun Current, coached by Cheeseboy628. Now this is the battle of the OU teams. If you take a look at both of these teams, they can both pass for pretty solid OU teams, with Fog having ridiculously good Pokemon like Mew, Altaria, Landorus, Klefki, Rotom, and Hoopa. I think this was the exact same 6 Pokemon he brought against me, whereas Cheeseboy brings the same 6 that he usually brings, and this also could be an OU team. Diancie is not OU, but it kind of just fits in really, really well with this team, and the rest of his Pokemon are really scary OU threats. So what did you think of the team preview, Dave?
I mean, just looking at these two teams, we see a lot of OU threats, such as Bisharp, Thundurus, Hoopa Unbound, Landorus T, Mega Altaria. We also see a bunch of commonly used walls, such as Rotom Wash, Mew. Diancie's not terribly common in OU, but it's still a really good Pokemon. Oh, and then there's also Manaphy, which you never know what that thing can do. So yeah, it looks like Cheeseboy has brought a very offensive-looking team. I don't see too many walls on his side, while Foghorn has brought more of a mixed, balanced type of team. Like, it seems like half bits of wall, while the other half is, and actually, the other half of the team is all physical attackers, such as Hoopa Unbound. Interestingly to note, though, is he didn't bring your favorite map, which is, of course, Chansey.
Oh my gosh. I hate Chansey. But yeah, so, despite Fog's team being so incredibly scary, I do think Cheeseboy has a pretty decent matchup because, he does actually have a decent Hoopa switch in Diancie, so unless Hoopa is carrying some type of, I don't know if it gets any steel moves naturally, unless it's carrying like HP Steel or something like that, I can't really crush the Diancie. I know it gets Energy Ball, but depending on the Diancie set, I'm not sure how hard it will hit the Diancie, and I know Fog likes to run physical Hoopa, so if he's running physical, Energy Ball won't crush Diancie necessarily. And Cheeseboy just has things that really, really wreck Fog, such as Bisharp, Mega Medicham does wreck him except the Mew. Is a very nice switch into Medicham, but this Manaphy,
The Manaphy was the best part.
the Manaphy was the best part. But normally, like, I'm not exactly sure what Manaphy set this is, as you'll.
Like, I've never seen a Manaphy do that much physical damage before.
I'm not exactly sure what Manaphy set this was because its U-turn did 41% to a Rotom. Now, even if Rotom was uninvested, that's a lot of damage. Manaphy does not have a very high attack stat, and U-turn is not that strong of a move. So this may have been like choice banded Manaphy. I'm not 100% sure, but I think a normal Manaphy set, like Tail Go 3 attacks, would have been fantastic against this team. But I think I know why he probably brought U-turn because I'm not sure if it was a fully physical set, but it definitely had to have some investment to do that much to a Rotom. But the U-turn is definitely for Hoopa, who could probably take a +3 Scald even without an Assault Vest. So I think that's one of the reasons that U-turn is on this set. So overall, though, getting into the actual battle, Fog kind of got unlucky with some early Stone Edges. He missed the Stone Edge right off the bat on an incoming Manaphy and whatnot, and there definitely was some hacks on both sides, but definitely more on Cheese Boy's favor. So Cheese definitely got a little bit lucky in this game, but Fog it didn't look like he really put a lot of time prepping into this game because he does not have anything for Bisharp. And the reason I say that is because he's running Adamant Altaria, completely risking the chance of Bisharp being Jolly, and he's not even speed creeping Bisharp with Mew. Even in OU, it's like mandatory for Mew to be able to speed creep things like Breloom and Jolly Bisharp. So the fact that he's running, a really slow Mew and Adamant Altaria means that if this Bisharp were able to get to +2, which it probably can on things like a possible Choice Locked Hoopa or a Klefki.
Not to mention that Landorus T in the background also makes Bisharp stronger.
Yeah, because the Intimidate. Exactly, the Intimidate will make Bisharp even more threatening. So the fact that he really didn't prepare well for that, it's definitely going to put him at a disadvantage, and it did put him at a disadvantage as later on in the game Bisharp came in and it was able to it got crit by the Hoopa and only lived with 2 HP, but then it was able to kill the Hoopa with Sucker Punch, then knock out the Altaria with Iron Head because the Altaria was slower, and then hit the Mew before the Mew could hit it and get a really huge knockoff on the Mew, weakening it a ton, just allowing Cheese Boy to clean it up later. So Cheese Boy was able to take a pretty convincing 5-0 victory, playing pretty well, but overall it just seems like, Fog just didn't prepare properly for Cheese Boy's ridiculously threatening team. What do you think about that, Dave?
I definitely think the Sun Current's prepared well for this type of battle right here, especially with the Bisharp. Bisharp just tears this team apart. I mean, it cuts Mew in half, it squashes Q-Tip Bird Altaria, it doesn't care about Landorus T getting intimidated with those Defiant boosts, and it doesn't care about Hoopa Unbound because that thing has paper defense anyway.
Yeah, absolutely, and it showed to me, it really was, because the way Fog prepared for it really made Bisharp even that much more of a threat. And then Thundurus just destroys his team too, because a potential mixed Thundurus is incredibly threatening, because something like Knockoff or Superpower with a Life Orb would do a ton to something like Hoopa. It's got moves like HP Ice or Iron Tail that can deal with Mega Altaria, HP Ice which destroys the Landorus, and Thunderbolt just really hits everything else hard. So the Thundurus had a very nice matchup here, but the Manaphy, I really want to know what set this is. I'm going to check out Cheese Boy's team builder later because this probably was an offensive Rotom. I can imagine it being an offensive Rotom, but regardless, Manaphy's U-turn did 41% to a Rotom. Do you know how much damage that is to a Pokemon with a natural base 105 defense? Like, that's crazy. I'm
actually looking at Manaphy's physical moveset right now. It gets things like Waterfall, Dive, that's pretty normal. It gets Knockoff. It gets Bounce, I don't think that's useful. And lastly, there is Last Resort, which is an interesting move.
Last Resort, that would be pretty funny. So if Cheese used a physical Manaphy, that is crazy innovation, and I really do appreciate that. And that's pretty much all I have to say about this game. I just think that Fog really has an incredible team here. I remember trying to prepare for this team, and I did not know where to turn because everything is just so scary. So I think he really needs to make sure that he puts a little bit more thought into his building and maybe even do some more testing and whatnot to get really used to his team. That's the most important thing, being used to your team and comfortable with it, because he's really got a threatening team, and Cheese Boy is the king of being comfortable with his team. He brings these same 6 Pokemon almost every week and is just so comfortable using them. And regardless of, whether he wants to change his team up or not, he's going to be able to use these Pokemon well and play with them well. So you always have to try to prepare accordingly, and believe me, it's not going to be easy. So I think Fog needs to put in a little more effort there. And that's all I pretty much have to say about this game.
I just think that the element of surprise is really important in this kind of league.
Yeah, that's true. It is true. And, to really surprise your opponent, you have to make sure you put in that type of effort. I know that, especially coming from, being a coach of a team that has a lot of lower tiered Pokemon on it. I don't really have a lot of OU Pokemon, one being my Mega, one being Tyranitar, so I really need to make do with what I have, but I make sure that, I get comfortable with those certain Pokemon to be able to put up a fight even against some of these a lot more viable and high tier Pokemon. So that being said, we will move on to the third game. Okay, so for our third game here, we have Manaphy City, coached by Cadillacs, and Togobor, the coach of the Portland Timbers. Now, the Portland Timbers are 4-0, and Manaphy City is the other new team other than me in the majors currently, and they're making some noise. But this game was a little odd in my opinion, because you have Togobor, who, like I said, is undefeated, has a ridiculously powerful team, and his Cresselia especially seems to really be taking names and taking lives, because with a Calm Mind set, it's just so ridiculously bulky that it can take hits all day and set up a bunch of Calm Minds and be able to beat a lot of opposing Calm Minders, because it has the access to Psyshock and a really nice move pool with things like Ice Beam, Moonblast. I might get Thunderbolt, I'm not sure. I don't think it does, but I don't think so. But it's got a very nice move pool, and its stats are just absolutely ridiculous. So I don't think that, looking at team preview right away, I was like, I'm not sure really what he's gonna have for this Cresselia. Maybe he's gonna have like Toxic on Hippowdon. He's definitely gonna need something to put it on a timer. What'd you think at the team preview, Dave?
The team composition for Manaphy City seems very interesting. You can just tell that it does not want to have any entry hazards on their side whatsoever by having the Defog Skarmory, and as well as a rapid spinning Starmie. Just because when Pinsir Mega Evolves, it will take a heck of a lot of damage from Stealth Rock.
Yeah, because his Mega Pinsir could definitely put a lot of pressure on Toge's team. Zapdos is a very nice check, but I believe Pinsir can get things like Stone Edge, so if he does want to bring something like Stone Edge to catch a Zapdos off guard, that would be really nice for him, because if that's not offensive, Zapdos and +2 Stone Edge would definitely knock it out. So a good choice. I don't know if he brought Stone Edge, but that would be a good choice. And other than that, Pinsir just destroys the Timbers. So if he can play his Pinsir well, I think he has a chance. But unfortunately, he made a pretty questionable play in the beginning of the game. I think this could have been a miscalc, and I definitely recommend that Cam calcs more properly or more efficiently, because he went for Will-O-Wisp on the first turn, expecting the Nidoqueen to want to go for Rocks or something like that. Then the next turn, Nidoqueen predicted a switch out, so it went for the Earth Power, but he stayed in Leaf Storm, getting a lot of damage off on the Nidoqueen. But then the next turn, Nidoqueen had more HP than half of what it had the last turn. So that means that Leaf Storm probably would not be in a good range to knock it out. So maybe it did have a chance, and he went for the roll. But I just feel like that wasn't very safe, being that he had a full health Rotom cut, and he had decent switch-ins to the Nidoqueen, especially if it wanted to go for Sludge Wave. I don't think Sludge Wave plus Ice Beam could even knock out something like Hippo. So I was definitely a little confused by that play there, because he allowed his Rotom Cut to miss out on the KO on the Nidoqueen and get just knocked out by the Sludge Wave.
Rotom could have been very useful for that melodic too. I mean, it's practically a direct counter to it.
Big time, yeah. Really, really checked the melodic nicely, because especially once the Nidoqueen was gone, which had already heavily weakened, it could just freely Volt Switch on things and get some nice momentum. But other than that, once he did that, then once Toad got in his Cresselia and revealed that he was Calm Mind, Manaphy City switched their Dragalge in, and I was thinking maybe this is a Toxic Dragalge, and he actually goes for the Sludge Wave as his check to Calm Mind Cresselia, and that, I guess you could just relate to poor preparation on the Manaphy City part, just because Cresselia really has shown to be such a huge threat so far. Even in my exhibition game with Togavor, his Calm Mind Cresselia almost swept me because I brought a Calm Mind Restock Cofagrigus thinking that could sweep his team, but Calm Mind Cresselia actually beats Calm Mind Cofagrigus one-on-one, which is crazy. So that thing is such a big threat with his ridiculous stats and cannot be taken for granted. You need to have Toxic on your team. Maybe Manaphy City did have like Hippowdon with Toxic, but the thing is he went to Dragalge and he Sludge Waved it after it got a Calm Mind up, meaning that, you know, even if he was Specs, he'd still be able to avoid a 2 KO from that and recover off the damage. And if he does get a poison, which he ended up getting, then that wouldn't be Toxic, that would be normal poison, which would not put the Cresselia on as much of a timer because it just does a consistent 12.5% every turn rather than increasing every turn. So I definitely don't agree with how the Manaphy City team played that there and prepared for Cresselia, because this really is one of the biggest threats in the format right now, especially the way Toad has been using it. And you know, like I said, I just think it was overall poor planning for a really, really huge threat, and Toad took advantage of that.
I think another turning point of the battle was when Manaphy City's strategy of using Whirlwind kind of backfired, in which one of the turns Hariyama was brought in, and at the same time its Toxic Orb was activated. And Hariyama with Toxic Orb and Guts is very, very scary.
It is very scary. I think that was a really interesting pickup by Toad because Hariyama has really, really nice utility and priority moves like Fake Out Bullet Punch, and it could run some nice sets with like Assault Vest, as well as with an Orb set and Guts, it really, really could hit hard. And Manaphy City does not have a switch in to Hariyama, because I'm pretty sure that physically defensive Skarmory may still get, and even Hippowdon may get 2 KO'd by, well, not fully physically defensive Hippowdon, but if he's like a mixed spread Hippowdon, then he gets 2 KO'd by close combat, which is really, really scary coming from a physical Pokemon and such a really reliable stab move like close combat. Manaphy City not bringing a Ghost type, so definitely good call on Togavor's part, because Manaphy City had nothing to stop the Cresselia, but at least Toad did have other things that could just put huge pressure on Manaphy City, like Mega Gardevoir and Toxic Orb Hariyama. And that's pretty much all I had to say about that game. Anything you would like to add, Dave?
Well, not much I can really add to what you just said, but I do like Melodic. I will just say that much. I like Melodic, I like the bulky Melodics that have Scald, so
yeah. I can't agree with you there, but I do like Cresselia, not necessarily for its Calm Mind set very much, but I am a huge Trick Room lover, so I do love the big Psychic Duck for that, and props to Toad for using it so well. So Manaphy City has a great team, and I really think that if he just prepares a little bit better for huge threats like that, then he'll come out with a lot more victories than losses like this. So that's about it and all I have to say about this one. Both coaches, good luck in the rest of their games. And now we will move on to the fourth game. So here for the fourth game, we have the Montreal Cabalians against the San Antonio Swamperts. The Cabalians being coached by Dave Fernape, and the Swamperts being coached by Dallas Boy 1992. Now, this at team preview was definitely an interesting matchup because Zardex looks like he could just run all over the Swamperts, but these Swamperts do have some really, really big threats to the Cabalians. Like Conquidor is definitely a big threat. A well-played Empoleon could be a huge threat, as well as things like Dragonite. Gothitelle is always extremely threatening, and Heatran does not really have good switch-ins, because if this Zardex is not bulky and if the Heatran does something like Earth Power, then nothing really switches into this Heatran safely. So what did you think at the team preview, Dave?
Looking at the Swampert's team, you can tell that he was very much prepared for the Ferrothorn lead from the other team, especially with that Gothitelle right there with Shadow Tag. And as I was watching the battle, it had things like Taunt, Hidden Power Fire. It was as if it was like just meant to shut down specifically that Ferrothorn. I thought it was pretty interesting.
Yep. Yep. And Dallas has been one who has been advocating for a ban on Gothitelle in this type of format, and he's been showing why week by week by really making some noise with Gothitelle and trapping some big threats. So, right first turn of the game, Dallas makes a very good prediction, predicting the Ferrothorn lead, and he has Taunt and HP Fire to beat the Ferrothorn, and he is able to taunt it right from the beginning, not allowing it to get up any type of hazards or possibly paralyze it or leech seed or anything, and then just quickly 2 KOs it with HP Fire. So definitely very good, a very nice start for the Swampers.
I still can't get over how he practically expected the Ferrothorn to be the first Pokemon, let alone be on the other person's team.
Right, because it was like he predicted the Ferrothorn lead and had the perfect moveset to check it with the taunt and the HP Fire and everything. And maybe Dave should have considered something like a Shed Shell on Ferrothorn, because Ferrothorn is generally a Pokemon that is good to trap even in the OU tier, but you never know with this type of format what Gothitelle is going to be designed to trap, I guess. So can't really totally fault him for that. But as the game went on, this Weavile is ridiculously threatening to the Swampers team, but unfortunately, Dave did not play it very well in the sense that he switched out. I believe he had his Mandibuzz in, and he switched out into his Weavile to take a Magma Storm from a Heatran. Now, there haven't been many times where I've ever switched in a Weavile to a Heatran. Maybe if the Heatran is weakened and I know that it wants to go for something like Stealth Rocks, maybe I'll predict and go into my Weavile and pick it off with Knockoff or something. But it was a full HP Heatran, nearly full HP Heatran, and basically Magma Storm or any type of fire move would do pretty good damage to the Kabalian's team. So Weavile would be one of the last things I'd ever want to switch in, considering how much work it does, because things like Knockoff and Low Kick really hit Empoleon hard. Knockoff and Icicle Crash destroy, and Low Kick just really destroys the whole team, because even Conkeldurr can't switch in safely. Icicle Crash, I think after Rocks is like a 2 KO if it's the Life Orb Weavile, so Conkeldurr can't really switch in necessarily safely because it keeps taking a ton of damage. So if the Kabalians played Weavile well, I think they would have had a much better showing in this game. But they lose their Weavile early on, and then later on he brings his Zardex out, and the Swampers bring out their Habanberry Dragonite, and Dave goes for an Earthquake on the Dragonite as the Dragonite comes in, and then on the next turn he goes for another Earthquake, predicting a switch, but the Dragonite goes right for the Dragon Claw because it was Habanberry and did have his multi-scale intact. So even if he did go for the Dragon Claw, it wouldn't have made much of a difference, but either way, going for Earthquake was definitely an over prediction, and then he was down a quick 3-5 and put him in a bad deficit.
I mean, whenever a full HP Dragonite is out, you just gotta get rid of that multi-scale, no matter what.
Exactly. Even if you wasted the Habanberry, getting rid of the multi-scale is always very nice, as Dave said, because imagine it comes down to something where, it's your Nidoking versus the Dragonite, and Nidoking, it's going to outspeed, maybe it's Scarfed, maybe the Dragonite isn't, it's not Scarfed, and, Nidoking has Ice Beam. If the multi-scale is broken, then Nidoking will be able to knock out the Dragonite with Ice Beam. But if the multi-scale is not broken, then, Ice Beam just won't be strong enough to be able to KO the Dragonite twice, basically. So that's why it's definitely really important to, break Dragonite's multi-scale. The Swampers didn't really have good switches to Dragon Claw, so if he went for a Dragon Claw, and we knew that the Heatran wasn't Scarfed, so he didn't lose anything by going for Dragon Claw there. That's the thing. So definitely not the best play on Dave's part, but losing the Weavile really put him in a bad spot. And then the Swampers pulled off a really, really nice Empoleon set with agility and 3 attacks, which is kind of like a DPP relic, but was a really, really good choice for this game, because once the Ferrothorn was gone, which they did a great job of trapping it right away, this Empoleon really had kind of a date with destiny. As long as it gets set up on something like Mandibuzz, then it just comes in, sets up, and sweeps. So shout out to the Swampers on bringing a really cool and fun set.
I agree. The Swampers did an excellent job of having that element of surprise, especially with that Empoleon and Gothitelle set. As for the Falcons, all I have to say is don't let your Weavile get set on fire.
Yeah, don't let your Weavile get. Yeah, that is the moral of the battle. Don't let your Weavile get set on fire. And Agility and Polion is a really cool set. So congratulations to the Swappers on getting their first win here. That was a very, very huge turnaround, and hopefully the Cabalians will, pick it up with the plays a little bit, because they have a great team. They really have a fantastic team. Such a good job drafting. So I hope that they will be able to turn around, because Dave is a fantastic guy, and I would love to see him snag some nice wins. So that being said, we will move on to our fifth game. All right, so here I will be commentating my own battle once again. This is the fifth battle of our weekly recap, featuring me, the coach of the St. Louis Rams, and Razor, the coach of the New York Metangs. Now, I know this battle very well, so I don't really have to sit there and think about what to say. Basically, I brought a really hyper-offensive team. It was really designed to be one of those teams where it's kind of like a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 type of deal. It didn't really matter necessarily what came in after Bronzong, but as long as I brought in the right Pokemon each time, my game plan should be able to work, because I had a dual screens Stealth Rock Explosion Bronzong, and then 3 Dragon Dancers and Mega Gyarados, Life Orb Salamence, and a Smooth Rock Tyranitar. Smooth Rock is so I can do a little bit of breaking, and then when I go down, I have a bunch of turns for Stoutland to be able to possibly clean up a weakened team. And then I have a Life Orb Azelf to really, really be able to break his team. He does not have switches to this Azelf set. It is substitute knockoff Psychic and Energy Ball. Energy Ball was for a potential Suicune. Even Donphan takes a lot from Energy Ball. So, yeah, basically, what did you think of Team Preview, Dave?
Okay, well, looking at your team, you have a lot of physical threats, I can see. Like Gyarados, Salamence, Stoutland, Tyranitar. Like, those all seem very dangerous. Especially Gyarados, because after Porygon 2 is knocked out, it can really just clean up the other team very well. Looking at the Metangs team, though, they have... It seems to be very balanced from what I can tell.
Exactly, but I was really surprised, because the Metangs definitely have a pretty bulky roster, and I thought they would bring things like Suicune and Cobalion to mitigate some of my really powerful physical attackers, but they didn't. They actually brought a more offensive team than I expected, so that definitely caught me off guard, and despite me having things that could really threaten his team, he had things that could really, really threaten mine. So what happened was, I lit off with Bronzong, and I was only able to get up a Reflect, and then because of that, my Salamence was only able to set up a Dragon Dance and nearly KO a Porygon. So Salamence, the possible biggest threat to his team, was only able to nearly get 1 kill. So because of that, that kind of put me at a disadvantage early on. I was already down 6-4, so I sent in my Azelf to kind of clean up the Porygon, which it did. And then some mind games were played. I had a Reflect up, and I knew that the Toxicroak would not be able to kill me with Sucker Punch if it had it and whatnot, so I was able to knock out the Toxicroak, which was a very big threat to my team, with the Psychic. So it was quickly tied at 4-4. And one of the big turning points in the match was how after this, I was able to bring in my Tyranitar on his Scarfed Hoopish Shadow Wall and set up a Dragon Dance with T-Tar, because T-Tar at +1 can break this Venusaur, which would allow my Gyarados to really, really clean up, and even T-Tar to be able to kind of, do a lot of damage to his team, because without Toxicroak, then he doesn't have any Pokemon that could just straight out 1 and KO me, except maybe a Choice Banded Haxorus, which he was running, but T-Tar could do tons of damage to that thing too, possibly KOing it with Stone Edge. So the big turning point in the match was after I got to +1 with Tyranitar, I missed my first Stone Edge on the Venusaur, and it crit me with Giga Drain, so I was able to get a lot of HP back, and I wasn't able to 2-hit KO it, which I definitely would have been able to had I hit the first Stone Edge. So if I did 2-hit KO the Venusaur, it would have been a guaranteed win for me, but unfortunately we ended up missing, and after we missed, later on, it came down to his Victini versus my 1% Azelf. He still had 4 Pokemon left, as I only had 3, and instead of U-turning into his Venusaur, which would have been the right play to prevent my Gyarados from setting up, he actually went for the Thunderbolt, thinking that his Choice Scarf Thunderbolt would be enough to not let my Gyarados set up, but he was wrong, as Gyarados is ridiculously bulky, and I was able to set up 2 Dragon Dances, and I'll be able to sweep his team and win the game. So, not the most clean victory, because had he made the right play by U-turning into Venusaur, he probably would have won the game. But had Tyranitar not missed, then I definitely would have won the game. So it was kind of one that, just kind of went either way and was kind of a messy match back and forth. I believe it was considered the game of the week because it was the closest, but it wasn't necessarily the greatest game on both coaches' ends, because I think we both could have played better, and without the hacks, then it would have been, definitely a different game. So that's all I have to say about that one. What about you, Dave?
Well, I don't think I could have said anything better myself. You did a good job of explaining the whole thing. Gotta say, Mega Gyarados is quite something. I mean, I don't think anyone really expects Mega Gyarados to be that bulky on the special defensive side. I mean, it did take 1 Thunderbolt after all.
2. It took 2.
Oh, it took 2?
Yep. Exactly. When I originally drafted Mega Gyarados, believe me, it is not the greatest Mega in this format, because it doesn't have tons of versatility, and it isn't such an immediate threat. Like a +1 crunch only does like 40% to a physically defensive Venusaur, not even sometimes. So that doesn't seem to be that crazy threatening, but the fact that it's so ridiculously bulky and can set up on so many things and have coverage for so many things is really, really nice. And it really proved its worth in this game, because a lot of people probably would have made the mistake thinking that a Scarf Victini could 2 KO Gyarados, but that is not the case, because the thing is very, very fat. Alright, so then we will move on to our final game. Alright, so here we have the final match of the weekly recap. We have Jolt, the coach of the Toronto Staraptors, against Richard Horizon, the coach of the Oakland Rosa Raiders. Now, personally, a team preview, I don't like Richard's matchup just because he does have something like Mamoswine, which is like possibly the biggest threat to Jolt's team out of like any Pokemon. But other than that, Jolt's offensive Pokemon just do so much to all of Richard's. Like, there are so many things on Richard's team that, or so many things on Jolt's team that Richard doesn't have good switch-ins for. So I definitely do like Jolt's matchup in this game, and he's been showing week after week that he's really, really preparing well and putting a lot of time and effort into his preparation, which is why he is, currently 3-0 going into this game. So what do you think about this, Dave?
Let's see. Looking at Jolt's team, somehow he has all the Pokemon that I would never, ever want to face in my battling career. Like, he has Talonflame, he has Clefable, he has Bloom, he has Gliscor, and of course Jirachi, because no one can out-hacks me without my permission. Looking at Richard's team, though, he has brought his Mega Lopunny along with the well-renowned Final Gambit Staraptor that everyone seems to love. Oh, that's the other thing that happened. He did something very interesting with his Zoroark in this battle that I really liked to see. Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, Richard does have some nice threats to Jolt's team. Like, Mega Lopunny doesn't really have very good switch-ins. Clefable can switch in, but Gliscor can't really if he has Ice Punch. And like I said, Mamoswine has a move that can 1-hit or 2-hit KO everything. Basically, except for Clefable, every single Pokemon on Jolt's team can get 1-hit KO'd by one of Mamoswine's moves. If it runs Stone Edge, it can 1-hit KO Talon. Earthquake 1-hit KOs the Jirachi and the Lucario, while Ice Bolt Crash could easily KO the Breloom and the Gliscor. So that's a big threat. But Jolt does have nice checks to things like Latios, very nice checks to Latios. Gliscor and Jirachi pivoting easily, not easily, but can definitely pivot around Staraptor if they play well. And Arcanine here definitely has some potential, but I'm not exactly sure if Richard used it the best way. He used a bulky set that carried Roar, Overheat, Iron Head, and Morning Sun. So, I mean, it might seem like a strange set, but it actually worked at the beginning of the battle. Yep, it did. But the thing was, like, it didn't really pressure Jolt's team. Like,
definitely, I can see why he would bring something like that to be able to come in on Clefable, easily roar it out, because Jolt is known for setting up and sweeping people with all these crazy Clefable sets, and then something like Talonflame as well. After the Intimidate, can't do too much to Arcanine with, even like a +1 Brave Bird. Won't even do too much to Arcanine, so he could come in and roar it out and just keep pressure on it. But the thing is, with Overheat and Iron Head, he's not putting a lot of pressure on things like Talonflame and Clefable. Iron Head, yes, I know it's super effective, but he didn't have a lot of attack investment, and his Iron Heads were doing like under 30% to Clefable. So unless he was going to get a bunch of flinches in a row, that he wasn't doing much to Clefable. And he didn't have anything like Toxic or Stone Edge for Talonflame, so I wasn't really too crazy about the Arcanine set, because although it was definitely good at phasing out some of Jolt's Pokemon, it wasn't good at putting necessary pressure on Jolt's team to be able to, possibly create openings for himself.
The set kind of started to fall off after he started using Overheat one too many times, not to mention the Moonblast hacks on the special attack drops.
Exactly. Exactly. So he wasn't doing any damage with Overheat after some of those Moonblast drops. But basically, Richard gets his Stealth Rocks up right away, and Jolt doesn't have a way to remove them. But he was skillfully able to keep putting pressure on Richard's team by bringing things in like Fable that Richard just couldn't really touch too well with things like Arcanine. And Arcanine did quite a bit of phasing. I'm sure he was trying to get a Talonflame to come in or something on Stealth Rocks, but he was not able to get that. And one time he dragged in Lucario, and Jolt decided to just go right for an attack and revealed that he was a specially offensive one with Life Orb Aura Sphere, and he did get a really, really big crit. Now, the reason that was big was because the Arcanine took about 80% from the crit, meaning that, he would have took 50-something and would have been at a decent spot to be able to come in even after something like Stealth Rocks, if he had not taken the crit damage, and would have been able to recover on something like Clefable or even possibly Jirachi. So that crit was definitely unfortunate, because if he didn't get the crit, then he also Jolt wouldn't be able to knock out the Arcanine with Flash Cannon the next turn. So he possibly would have to go for Aura Sphere again, which Rich could have switched in his Latios there to resist it or something like that. So that definitely affected the game. Do you agree with that, Dave?
Yeah, that Mamoswine was practically his winning condition against the other team. It was kind of critical, pun intended, that he lost his Mamoswine. Not to mention, I was really surprised that a Draco Meteor from the Latios only did, 35% to a Jirachi with a critical hit. That was just shocking to me.
Yep, I mean, now that, Gen 6 implemented the whole 1.5 critical hit, game mechanic, crits from, Latios to Jirachi do not do too much, especially when the Latios is not boosted. I believe it was a Scarf set, and if it wasn't Scarf, it may not have been Scarfed, but it just definitely was not Specs or Life Orb or anything like that. I doubt it was Draco Plate either, because I know Jirachi is bulky, but Latios is very strong, so I don't think that a crit Draco would only do 35 if he had any type of boosting item. So, getting back into the game, like I said, I just don't think Richard really had what was necessary to put pressure on the Staraptors. I'm not sure what type of Staraptor set Richard was running. I think that if you ran something like Choice Band, that would have been really useful, because Jolt just does not have switches. I don't think Gliscor can take Choice Banded Brave Birds from a Reckless Staraptor. Those are ridiculously strong, and I do not think that Gliscor would be able to take them. I don't think that especially defensive Jirachi would take them very well at all either. So I think that's, if he didn't have that, I think that's something he should have brought. But
I thought it was really interesting how he chose to disguise his Zord as that Staraptor, just for a fear factor kind of thing.
I think so too. Now, that was definitely a play that I wanted to talk about, because Richard did a really nice job of bringing his Staraptor on the Gliscor, and Jolt protected, because I'm not 100% sure that if Richard went for a Final Gambit and Jolt protected, if the Staraptor would go down. It may have not, but regardless, just to protect and get some HP back to take a potential Brave Bird or something like that and roost back up would be a smart play on Jolt's part. So he went for the protect, but Richard actually didn't have a Staraptor out. He had a Zoroark out, and he went right for the nasty plot. And now, this is what I think about the Zoroark. I think that was really cool, and I probably wouldn't have expected it to be Zoroark either, but what I didn't like is that Zoroark is so ridiculously frail, and even though it has nice coverage for Jolt's team, Jolt has been bringing Talonflame, Breloom, and Lucario like every single week, and can easily revenge kill the Zoroark with, priority moves. Breloom has super effective Mach Punch. Life Orb, Extreme Speed, and Vacuum Wave from Lucario will knock out Zoroark in one hit. Any type of offensive Talonflame will knock out Zoroark in one hit. So, unless he was Focus Sash, then he wouldn't even be able to get a kill against any of those things because they'd be able to just quickly take it out with priority, and that would be the end of Zoroark. But unfortunately, Night Days wasn't even strong enough to kill the Gliscor, so he didn't get the kill there on one shot. And if he did have a Sash, it was broken. So that was unfortunate for Rich. And after that, he just was not really able to break Jolt's team, and Jolt was just able to apply so much pressure with things like Clefable and Lucario, Jirachi, which was able to get a flinch on the Mamoswine, allowing it not to get an Earthquake off, and just going right down after that. So definitely good for smart for Jolt to speed creep the Mamoswine. I definitely would have done that as well myself, because Mamoswine is so scary offensively, and you want to be able to check it, and checking it defensively is so hard. So a lot of times you want to check it offensively, and that is exactly what Jolt did. And because he did all these things so well, he came out with a very convincing 4-0 victory.
I think it's pretty impressive how Jolt has kind of made his team to be balanced so that half his team is like comprised of walls. The other half is comprised of really threatening physical and special attackers. And I think it's also really good that they all synergize together like that.
Yeah, especially Jolt's team really is showing fantastic offensive and defensive synergy, and is really looking like a force to be reckoned with. Now, Richard has a fantastic team too. I just don't think he prepared the best for this game, because like I said, his Arcanine, I understand what it was there to do, but it just wasn't putting the necessary pressure that it would need to on Jolt's team. And the Zoroark, even though with like a Night Days, Sludge Wave, and Flamethrower set, even though that could have like really done a lot of damage to Jolt's team, he's got all this priority that could easily just swiftly take out this Zoroark. So I don't think that was the best preparation necessarily either, but hey, it was definitely really cool, and it's cool to see Zoroark get some use in the format.
And that concludes the Week 4 recap of the NPL. I am Dave.
And I am Matty Brolick, and I hope you guys enjoyed, and hopefully this is my last time on here, so I can, make sure that the stars of the show will resume, both Palm-Man and Dave.
Thank you for watching, and until next time.
Later.